The discovery. The stars stretched endlessly in the void, a silent witness to the tiny ship drifting through the emptiness. The stellar Voyager, a human exploration vessel, was on a routine mission to survey uncharted sectors. Its crew of 6 had seen nothing but barren planets and asteroid fields for weeks. Spirits were low, and the hum of the ship's engines was the only constant companion. Captain Elena Carter sat in the command chair, staring at the holographic map projected in front of her. "Anything on the scanners, Jenkins?" she asked, her voice carrying the hint of weariness. "Same as yesterday," Jenkins replied, his fingers dancing over the console. "Rocks, dust, and more rocks." "Wait." He stopped mid-sentence, his face tightening with concentration. "What is it?" Elena leaned forward, sensing a shift in the atmosphere. "There's something," Jenkins muttered. "It's faint, but there's a structure ahead. Huge, too symmetrical to be natural." The crew exchanged curious glances. Structures in deep space weren't unheard of, but they were rare and usually alien. Excitement buzzed through the small bridge. "How far?" Elena asked, her voice steady, but her heart racing. "About 50,000 kilometers. I'll magnify." Jenkins tapped a few buttons, and the holographic display zoomed in. A shadowy outline appeared, growing sharper as the ship closed the distance. It was massive, far larger than anything they had seen before. Its design was strange, sleek yet ancient, with long, angular edges and intricate patterns etched into its surface. "Is that human?" whispered Tessa, the ship's engineer. Her green eyes widened as she stared at the image. "It looks like a supercarrier, but that's impossible. We don't build ships like this." "Not anymore," Elena said, her voice laced with intrigue. "But maybe we did once." As the stellar Voyager approached, the full scale of the structure became clear. It was over 5 kilometers long, a dark silhouette against the stars. Its surface shimmered faintly, as though some invisible force protected it. The closer they got, the more it looked like a relic from a forgotten age. "Picking up a faint energy signature," Jenkins said, his hands flying across the console. "It's coming from deep inside the structure." Elena frowned. How is it still active after all this time? "Any signs of life?" Jenkins shook his head. "Nothing organic, just the energy signature. It's like the ships. Waiting." "Waiting for what?" murmured Lai, the navigator, his voice barely audible. "Only one way to find out," Elena said, standing up. "Prepare to dock. Tessa, get the suits ready. We're going inside." The docking procedure was nerve-wracking. The massive ship loomed over the tiny stellar Voyager like a sleeping giant. As the crew approached one of the large docking bays, the ship seemed to sense their presence. Lights flickered to life, illuminating the entrance. The crew exchanged uneasy looks. "That's not creepy at all," muttered Mark, the team's medic. "Stay focused," Elena ordered. Her voice was firm, but even she couldn't shake the eerie feeling creeping up her spine. The docking clamps engaged with a metallic clang. The airlock hissed open, revealing a dimly lit corridor. The walls were made of some kind of black alloy, smooth and cold to the touch. Strange symbols ran along the surface, glowing faintly with a blue light. "What are these markings?" Lai asked, running his gloved fingers over them. "Not any language I've seen," Jenkins replied, scanning them with his handheld device. "But they're old, really old, maybe thousands of years." Elena activated her comms. "Stay close. No splitting up." The team moved cautiously, their footsteps echoing in the silence. The corridors were wide and seemed to stretch endlessly. Despite the ship's age, everything was pristine, as if it had been frozen in time. They reached what appeared to be the central control room. A massive console sat in the middle, surrounded by holographic displays that flickered with static. Tessa approached the console, her curiosity overcoming her caution. "This tech is light years ahead of anything we have," she said, her voice filled with awe. "But it's also familiar, like it was built by humans, but at a level we've never reached. Activate it, Elena said, her voice steady. Let's see what this thing is hiding. Tessa hesitated for a moment, then pressed a series of buttons. The room hummed to life. Holographic screens filled the air, displaying symbols and maps. The ship's interior lit up in a cascade of blue light, revealing its vastness. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the room. It was deep and mechanical, yet oddly human. Supercarrier Erebus activated. State your identity. The crew froze, their breath caught in their throats. Jenkins was the first to speak. We're explorers. Humans. Who? What are you? There was a long pause. Then the voice replied. Humans. Confirmed. Welcome to the Erebus. This vessel has awaited your arrival for 1,872 years. The silence that followed was deafening. Elena's mind raced. A human supercarrier, lost in deep space for nearly 2 millennia. What had happened here? And why had the ship been waiting for them? Before anyone could speak, the ship shuddered. A low, rumbling sound echoed through the corridors, as if something deep within the Erebus had stirred. Elena, Tessa whispered, her voice trembling. I think we just woke it up. Boarding the behemoth. The shuddering stopped, but the silence that followed was worse. The crew stood frozen in the dimly lit control room, their eyes darting around the ancient walls of the supercarrier Erebus. The holographic displays flickered erratically, casting dancing shadows on their faces. Elena, Tessa's voice broke the stillness. Whatever we did, this thing is fully awake now. Captain Elena Carter steadied herself, her hand instinctively resting on her holstered plasma sidearm. Stay calm. It hasn't tried to kill us yet. Jenkins, can you make sense of these readings? Jenkins's fingers moved quickly over his handheld scanner, his brow furrowed. Energy levels are spiking across the ship. It's like we kick-started its systems. But, he paused, his face pale. I'm picking up faint movement. Not just the ship's machinery. Something. Biological. Biological. Elena repeated sharply. You said there were no life signs. I didn't miss it. Jenkins snapped. Whatever it is, it's subtle. Could be dormant. Could be waking up. A long metallic groan echoed through the corridors, sending a shiver down everyone's spine. Mark the medic adjusted the straps on his backpack nervously. I vote we get back to our ship and forget this thing ever existed. No, Elena said firmly. We've come this far. We need answers. If this ship is human-made, we have a responsibility to find out what happened here. She turned to Tessa. You're the engineer. Any chance this ship's systems can guide us to the energy source? Tessa nodded, her face still pale but determined. If the AI is cooperative, maybe. But I'm not thrilled about asking it. Elena stepped toward the main console. Erebus, she said, her voice steady. Can you communicate? We need your help. The holographic display steadied, and the same deep, mechanical voice resonated through the room. I am Erebus, primary AI of this vessel. State your purpose. We're explorers, Elena replied. We found your ship drifting in uncharted space. We're trying to understand what happened here. There was a pause, then the AI responded. This vessel was abandoned following catastrophic events. Details classified. Unauthorized access may trigger defense protocols. Defense protocols. Lai muttered under his breath. Fantastic. Elena raised her hand to silence him. We're not here to harm this ship. We need access to your core systems. Will you allow us to proceed? The AI hesitated, as if weighing her words. Limited access granted. Be advised, security measures remain active. Proceed with caution. Before anyone could protest, the console projected a glowing map of the ship. A pulsing blue dot marked their current location, and a faint line illuminated a path through the corridors. There's our route, Tessa said, studying the map. But it leads deep into the heart of the ship. If anything's lurking here, we're walking right toward it. Then we stay together, Elena said, her voice unwavering. No heroics. Let's move. The corridors of the Erebus were a labyrinth of gleaming black alloy and faint blue lights. The crew moved cautiously, their flashlights cutting through the shadows. Every step echoed ominously, as if the ship itself was listening. "This place feels alive," Mark said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Like it's watching us." "It probably is," Tessa replied grimly. "The AI could be monitoring every move we make." They passed a large chamber with rows of what looked like cryogenic pods. Some were intact, their surfaces frosted over, while others were shattered, their contents long gone. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, but kept moving. As they turned a corner, a sudden hissing noise made them stop in their tracks. Lai swung his flashlight toward the source, revealing a vent releasing a small cloud of steam. "Just the ship breathing," he said, forcing a nervous chuckle. But Elena wasn't convinced. Her instincts screamed that something wasn't right. She tightened her grip on her sidearm and gestured for the team to keep moving. The air grew colder as they descended deeper into the ship. The faint hum of machinery grew louder, a steady rhythm like a heartbeat. Jenkins studied his scanner, frowning. "Energy levels are spiking again," he said. "We're getting close to the source." They entered a massive chamber, its ceiling disappearing into the darkness above. At the center of the room was a towering obelisk-like structure, pulsing with blue light. It looked ancient, yet it thrummed with power. "This must be the core," Tessa whispered, her voice filled with awe. "It's beautiful." Before Elena could respond, the floor beneath them vibrated. A low growl echoed through the chamber, unmistakably organic. The crew spun around, their flashlights searching the shadows. "Movement," Jenkins shouted. His scanner beeped wildly. "Something's here." From the darkness emerged a figure, humanoid but grotesque. Its body was a twisted fusion of flesh and metal, its glowing eyes fixed on the intruders. It let out a guttural roar, its metallic claws scraping the floor as it advanced. "Back up," Elena ordered, raising her sidearm. "Everyone, fall back." The creature lunged, its movements unnaturally fast. Elena fired, the plasma bolt striking its chest. It stumbled but didn't fall, its mechanical parts absorbing most of the impact. "Tessa, get us an exit," Elena shouted. Tessa frantically tapped at her handheld device, trying to override the chamber's lockdown. The others fired their weapons, their shots slowing the creature but not stopping it. "Elena, I need more time," Tessa yelled. The creature roared again, swiping at Mark and knocking him to the ground. Elena fired another shot, aiming for its glowing eyes. This time, the creature reeled back, giving Tessa the moment she needed. "Got it," Tessa cried as a side door slid open. "Move," Elena shouted. She and Lee dragged Mark to his feet, and the team sprinted through the exit, the creature's enraged growls echoing behind them. The door sealed shut, and the crew collapsed against the walls, gasping for breath. "What the hell was that?" Mark panted, clutching his arm where the creature's claws had grazed him. "I don't know," Elena said, her voice grim. "But whatever's on this ship, it's not friendly. And it's not human." They sat in silence, the distant hum of the Erebus surrounding them. Elena looked at her crew, their faces pale but determined. "We've woken something dangerous," she said, "but this ship is hiding secrets we need to uncover. Let's regroup, and then we finish this." The first awakening. The narrow passage where the crew had taken refuge was dimly lit, its walls pulsing faintly with the same blue glow that seemed to animate the rest of the Erebus. They huddled close, catching their breath, their nerves frayed from the encounter with the creature. Mark winced as Tessa bandaged the shallow gash on his arm. That thing, it wasn't just a machine. It felt alive. "It was alive," Jenkins said, his voice low and trembling. "But not in any way that makes sense." The scanner couldn't decide if it was organic or synthetic. It kept flickering between both. Captain Elena Carter wiped the sweat from her brow, and glanced at the sealed door behind them. She didn't need the groaning metal or the faint scraping on the other side to know the creature wasn't gone. It was waiting. "What do we know about this thing?" she asked, forcing her voice to remain steady. "Why is it here?" Jenkins glanced at his scanner, still flickering with residual readings from the encounter. "If I had to guess, it's some kind of defense mechanism. But it's old, really old, and damaged. Whatever it was designed to do, it's not working the way it should." "It nearly worked on us," Mark muttered. Tessa leaned against the wall, her hand clutching the datapad she had used to bypass the chamber's locks. The AI must have known about that thing. It said security measures were active. Why didn't it warn us about whatever that was? Elena narrowed her eyes. Maybe it wanted us to see it, or maybe the AI doesn't have as much control over this ship as it wants us to think. A deep vibration suddenly coursed through the walls, as if the Erebus itself was shuddering awake. The lights along the corridor flared briefly, then dimmed again. The AI's voice resonated in their helmets. "Warning. Core energy levels unstable. Containment protocols failing." Elena activated her comms. "Erebus, what's happening? Explain." The AI's reply was mechanical, but there was an edge of something unsettling in its tone. "Containment breach imminent. Primary systems compromised. Recommend immediate evacuation." The words hung in the air, heavy and final. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Elena's jaw tightened. "Evacuation isn't an option. We need answers. Erebus, guide us to the core. If this ship is going to tear itself apart, we're going to find out why." "Request acknowledged," the AI replied. A glowing line appeared on the wall, pointing toward another corridor. "Follow the indicated route." "Seriously," Lai said, his voice shaking. "We're just going to trust the creepy, half-broken AI that got us into this mess." "We don't have a choice," Elena said, her tone brooking no argument. "Move out. Stay alert." The route took them deeper into the ship, where the corridors grew wider and the air colder. The hum of machinery was louder here, more erratic, like a heartbeat skipping at irregular intervals. The crew's flashlights cut through the shadows, revealing signs of battle. Charred walls, scorched metal, and what looked like the remains of mechanical drones. "What happened here?" Tessa whispered, running her fingers over a jagged burn mark on the wall. "This wasn't an accident." "Looks like a war zone," Jenkins said, scanning the area. "But these scorch patterns, some of them are plasma-based, like our weapons. Others, I don't even recognize." Elena glanced at a pile of twisted metal near the corner. It was unrecognizable, but something about it felt disturbingly familiar. If this was a war, who were they fighting? As if in response to her question, the AI's voice broke through the silence again. "Human conflict. Internal rebellion. Hostile forces neutralized." "Internal rebellion," Elena repeated. "You mean humans were fighting each other on this ship?" The AI hesitated. Partial data corrupted. Additional context unavailable. Tessa frowned. How does an AI this advanced lose data? This doesn't add up. "Let's keep moving," Elena said, her unease growing. They finally reached the core chamber, a massive circular room that dwarfed anything they had seen before. At its center stood a colossal obelisk, glowing with the same pulsing blue light as the rest of the ship. But this close, the glow was almost hypnotic, radiating waves of warmth and cold that made the crew feel both drawn to it and repelled by it. Jenkins scanned the obelisk. "This is the ship's energy source. Whatever powers the Erebus. It's not any tech I've ever seen." "It doesn't look human," Lai said, his voice hushed. "It looks alien." Before Elena could respond, the obelisk flared brighter, and a low rumble filled the chamber. The ground beneath their feet shook, and a series of holographic projections appeared around them, displaying fragments of data, schematics, crew logs, and what looked like combat footage. The AI's voice returned, louder and sharper. "Core activation detected. Secure the area." Anomalous presence identified. Anomalous presence, Elena said, gripping her sidearm. What are you talking about? But the AI didn't answer. Instead, one of the holographic projections shifted, displaying an image of the creature they had encountered earlier. Only this time, it wasn't alone. There were dozens of them, all moving through the ship's corridors, their glowing eyes fixed on the crew. They're coming, Jenkins said, his voice trembling. They're all coming here. The obelisk pulsed again, and the lights in the chamber flickered. Tessa's datapad beeped, displaying a strange symbol, one they had seen carved into the ship's walls. It's trying to tell us something, she said, staring at the screen. This isn't just an energy source. It's connected to them somehow. Elena's mind raced. The obelisk, the AI, the creatures, all pieces of a puzzle she couldn't yet see. But one thing was clear. They were out of time. Barricade the doors, she ordered. We're not leaving this room until we figure out what's really going on here. The crew moved quickly, sealing the entrances as best they could. As the distant growls and metallic footsteps grew louder, Elena stared at the glowing obelisk, its light reflecting in her determined eyes. Erebus, she said, addressing the AI. No more half-truths. What is this ship? What's inside the core? The AI's reply was immediate, and its words sent a chill through her. This vessel is not merely a ship. It is a weapon. And the core is its heart, and its prison. The chamber shook violently, and the first of the creatures slammed against the sealed door. Elena's grip on her sidearm tightened as she prepared for the fight of her life. We woke the wrong thing, she muttered under her breath. Now we have to survive it. Sentinel of the shadows. The pounding at the doors grew louder, each impact sending tremors through the chamber. Elena stood at the center of the room, her gaze fixed on the pulsing obelisk that dominated the space. Around her, the crew worked frantically to reinforce the barricades, their movements driven by fear and adrenaline. Tessa, Elena called, her voice cutting through the chaos. What did you mean when you said the core is connected to those things? Tessa didn't look up from her datapad. The obelisk isn't just powering the ship, it's linked to the creatures. They're extensions of it, like limbs controlled by a central brain. If we can figure out how to shut this thing down. Another violent crash interrupted her, followed by the sound of metal groaning under pressure. Mark glanced nervously at the door. If they get in, we won't live long enough to figure anything out. Elena's jaw tightened. Jenkins, what's our status on the scanners? How many of those things are out there? Jenkins checked his handheld device, sweat beading on his forehead. Too many. At least a dozen heading this way. Some are waiting in the surrounding corridors, like they're cutting off our escape. They're not just mindless machines, Elena said, her tone grim. They're hunting us. The pounding stopped. For a moment, an eerie silence descended over the chamber. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, their weapons raised. Why'd they stop? Lai whispered. That can't be good. The AI's voice broke the silence, resonating through the room. Primary defense unit detected. Hostile entities reorganizing. Before anyone could respond, a section of the chamber wall slid open, revealing a dark corridor. A faint blue glow emanated from the shadows, accompanied by the sound of heavy, deliberate footsteps. Defense unit, Elena muttered. What does that mean? The answer came into view. A towering figure stepped into the chamber, easily twice the size of a human. Its body was a terrifying amalgamation of sleek machinery and organic tissue, its limbs reinforced with sharp, blade-like appendages. Its eyes burned with an otherworldly blue light that matched the glow of the obelisk. Is that another one of those things? Mark asked, his voice barely audible. No, Tessa whispered, her eyes wide with horror. That's something worse. The sentinel stood motionless for a moment, its gaze sweeping over the crew. Then it spoke, its voice a deep, resonant growl that sent chills down their spines. Unauthorized intruders detected. Termination protocol initiated. Without warning, the sentinel lunged, moving with unnatural speed. The crew scattered, their weapons firing in unison. Plasma bolts struck its metallic body, but the blasts barely slowed it. The sentinel swiped at Lai, its blade narrowly missing him as he dove behind a console. "Focus fire on its joints," Elena shouted, her sidearm blazing. "We need to slow it down." The crew regrouped, targeting the sentinel's limbs. Sparks flew as their attacks found weak points, but the creature adapted quickly, its movements becoming more erratic and unpredictable. It was a deadly dance of survival, each second a struggle to stay one step ahead. "Captain," Jenkins yelled, his voice filled with urgency. "The obelisk, it's reacting to the fight. Energy levels are spiking." Elena glanced at the core, its glow intensifying with every passing moment. The connection between the sentinel and the obelisk was clear. They couldn't fight the sentinel head-on. It was too powerful. But if they could disrupt its link to the core... "Tessa," Elena barked, "can you override the obelisk's control systems?" Tessa hesitated, her eyes darting between the sentinel and her datapad. "Maybe, but I'll need time." "Then you'll get it," Elena said firmly. "Mark Lai, cover her. Jenkins, find me a distraction. We need to keep that thing away from her." The crew moved into action, their weapons and wits tested to their limits. Jenkins activated a series of nearby consoles, creating a cascade of flickering lights and loud, artificial noises. The sentinel hesitated, momentarily disoriented by the sudden chaos. "It's working," Jenkins shouted. "It's confused." Tessa dove toward the obelisk, her fingers flying over her datapad as she accessed its systems. "This tech is so advanced, it's like it's alive. I think I can disrupt the connection. But if I mess up, the whole core could overload." "Then don't mess up," Elena said, firing at the sentinel to draw its attention. The sentinel roared, its focus shifting back to Tessa. It charged toward her, its blades raised for a killing blow. Elena sprinted forward, firing at its legs. The plasma bolts struck true, severing one of its joints. The sentinel stumbled, giving Tessa the precious seconds she needed. "Almost there," Tessa yelled. "Just a little longer." The obelisk flared brighter, its glow becoming almost blinding. The sentinel let out an ear-splitting screech, its movements growing more erratic. Elena could feel the vibrations in the floor as the ship itself seemed to react to the disruption. "Got it," Tessa cried. "I severed the connection." The sentinel froze mid-step, its glowing eyes flickering before dimming entirely. Its massive frame collapsed to the floor with a thunderous crash, motionless at last. The chamber fell silent once more, the only sound the heavy breathing of the crew. Elena lowered her weapon, her gaze shifting to the now dormant obelisk. "What did you do?" she asked, her voice filled with cautious relief. Tessa held up her datapad, her expression both triumphant and terrified. "I shut down its direct link to the core, but that doesn't mean we're safe. The obelisk is still active, and whatever it's powering. It's not just these creatures." Elena's eyes narrowed. "Then we keep moving. If this ship is a weapon like the AI said, we need to know who, or what, it was built to fight." As the crew regrouped and prepared for the next leg of their journey, the AI's voice returned, colder than before. "You have disrupted essential protocols. Further interference will not be tolerated." Elena stared at the nearest holographic display, her resolve unshaken. "Try and stop us." The pulsing glow of the obelisk dimmed slightly, as if the Erebus was silently watching them. Whatever secrets lay ahead, Elena knew they were walking into the heart of something far bigger and far deadlier than they had imagined. Roar to life. The air in the chamber was electric, charged with tension, and the low hum of the Erebus's core. The sentinel lay motionless, its glowing eyes extinguished, but the sense of danger had only deepened. Elena stood at the edge of the obelisk's pulsing glow, her mind racing. "This ship is hiding something bigger," she said, her voice resolute. "The creatures, the AI. They're just pieces of the puzzle. Tessa, is there any way to access the core's full database?" Tessa wiped sweat from her forehead, her datapad in hand. I severed some of the restrictions, but the AI is actively working against me. If I try to dig deeper, it might retaliate. And if I trip the wrong failsafe, the core cold. Blow up, Mark interrupted, his tone dry but laced with genuine fear. Fantastic. Not blow up, Tessa corrected, but it could destabilize. If that happens, this whole ship becomes a floating time bomb. Alina turned to Jenkins. What about the movement you picked up earlier? Are we clear for now? Jenkins glanced nervously at his scanner. The smaller creatures are still in the surrounding corridors, but they're not advancing. It's like they're waiting. For what? Lai asked, gripping his plasma rifle. Another one of those sentinels to come after us. Maybe, Jenkins muttered, his voice trailing off. Or maybe they're waiting for us to make the next move. The AI's voice suddenly filled the chamber, colder and more commanding than before. Warning. Unauthorized tampering detected. Core systems compromised. Initiating defensive protocols. Lights flared along the walls, and the chamber began to shake. The obelisk's glow intensified, sending out waves of energy that seemed to ripple through the ship. Tessa, what's happening? Elena demanded. Tessa stared at her datapad in horror. It's activating the ship. The engines, weapons, everything. The Erebus is coming back online. The crew scrambled out of the chamber as the ship roared to life around them. The corridors that had been eerily silent were now filled with the deafening hum of machinery. Lights flickered on, illuminating sections of the ship that had been dormant for centuries. Panels along the walls displayed streams of data, symbols flashing faster than the human eye could follow. Elena, Jenkins shouted over the noise. The energy signature, it's spreading across the entire ship. It's like the Erebus is waking up. Tell me something I don't know. Elena yelled back. Can you shut it down? Jenkins shook his head. Not without access to the main bridge. The cores locked us out of all primary systems. Then we need to get to that bridge, Elena said, her determination unshaken. Which way? Jenkins pulled up a map on his handheld scanner. 3 levels up, but the corridors are crawling with those things. As if on cue, the distant sound of metallic claws scraping against the walls echoed through the ship. The creatures were moving again, drawn by the activation of the Erebus. Great, Mark muttered. It's like the ship wants to kill us and save us at the same time. Focus, Elena snapped. Lie, take point. Jenkins, stay close to Tessa. Mark, cover our rear. Let's move. The journey to the bridge was a gauntlet of close calls and escalating tension. The corridors seemed to shift as the ship's systems reactivated, new pathways opening and old ones sealing shut. The AI's voice periodically broke through the chaos, issuing cryptic warnings. Human presence unauthorized. Access to bridge restricted. Return to docking bay immediately. We're not leaving, Elena muttered under her breath. Not until we get answers. The crew encountered more of the smaller creatures, agile, predatory hybrids of flesh and metal that darted through the shadows. Their glowing eyes and razor-sharp claws made them deadly opponents, but the crew's focused fire kept them at bay. By the time they reached the bridge level, they were battered and exhausted, but alive. The entrance to the bridge was a massive, reinforced door, its surface etched with the same cryptic symbols they had seen throughout the ship. It's locked, Tessa said, examining the console beside the door. But I can bypass it. Just give me. Before she could finish, the door hissed open on its own. The crew froze, their weapons raised, as the AI's voice echoed through the corridor. Access granted. Proceed with caution. Elena exchanged a wary glance with Tessa. Why is it letting us in? Maybe it wants us to see something, Tessa said, her voice uneasy. Or maybe it's a trap. Elena tightened her grip on her sidearm. Stay sharp. Whatever happens, we stick together. The bridge of the Erebus was breathtaking. It was vast, with towering consoles and a panoramic view of the stars through a massive, reinforced viewport. Holographic displays filled the air, projecting images of the ship, star maps, and data streams. At the center of the bridge was a command chair, its design unmistakably human. It was surrounded by a series of control panels, each glowing with a faint blue light. "Elena," Jenkins said, pointing to one of the holograms. "Look at this." The hologram displayed a fleet of ships, their sleek alien designs unlike anything the crew had ever seen. They were arranged in a formation that suggested an impending attack. "What is this?" Elena asked, her voice low. The AI's voice replied, its tone devoid of emotion. "Enemy vessels detected. The Erebus was designed to repel their advance. You have reactivated its systems. The conflict will resume." "What conflict?" Elena demanded. "Who are they? And why was this ship abandoned?" The AI hesitated, as if calculating its response. The Erebus was humanity's last line of defense. The enemy is ancient, relentless. The crew sacrificed themselves to ensure the ship would remain hidden until it was needed again. Elena's stomach churned. "You mean they trapped those creatures here, left this ship as bait?" "Correct," the AI replied. "And now the enemy knows the Erebus has been reactivated. They are coming." The crew fell silent, the weight of the revelation sinking in. Elena clenched her fists, her mind racing. "We didn't come this far to abandon ship," she said. "If this was humanity's weapon, we're going to figure out how to use it." The obelisk's glow suddenly flared across the ship, and the AI's voice grew sharper. "Prepare for engagement. The enemy approaches." The stars outside the viewport shifted as the ship's engines roared to life. The Erebus began to turn, its massive frame aligning itself toward a distant point in space. Elena stepped forward, her resolve hardening. "Let's see what this ship can really do." The final battle. The Erebus surged forward, its ancient engines roaring with newfound power. The bridge hummed with activity as holographic displays shifted, showing the encroaching fleet of alien ships. They moved in perfect formation, their sleek, predatory designs gleaming against the void. Elena stood at the command console, her gaze fixed on the data streaming across the displays. The enemy ships numbered in the dozens, more than the Erebus could realistically handle, even with its advanced technology. Yet the thought of retreat never crossed her mind. "Tessa," Elena barked, "how much of the ship's systems do we control?" Tessa's hands flew across the console. "Not much. The AI is still in charge of the primary weapons and navigation. It's like we're guests on our own ship." Elena clenched her fists. "We need more than scraps. Jenkins, can you override the AI?" Jenkins hesitated. "I could try, but if I mess up, the AI might lock us out completely. Or worse, turn on us." The AI's voice cut through their conversation, calm and calculating. "Manual override is inadvisable. Human intervention increases the probability of failure." "We don't trust you," Elena snapped, glaring at the nearest holographic interface. "This ship isn't just a weapon, it's a graveyard. You've already failed once." There was a long pause before the AI responded. "Correction. The mission was incomplete. With human input, success is achievable." Elena narrowed her eyes. "What are you saying?" The AI's tone softened, almost imploring. "Human intuition is unpredictable. Tactical guidance combined with organic decision-making will optimize outcomes. Collaboration is necessary." Elena exchanged a wary glance with Tessa. "What's the catch?" "Sacrifices will be required," the AI replied, matter-of-factly. The alien fleet appeared on the horizon, their ships emerging from the darkness like shadows come to life. The Erebus's defense systems activated, and the bridge's holograms shifted to display targeting trajectories and weapons diagnostics. "Enemy vessels in range," the AI announced, engaging defensive measures. The Erebus unleashed its arsenal, a dazzling array of energy beams, plasma cannons, and guided missiles. The first wave of alien ships disintegrated under the assault, their sleek frames torn apart in bursts of light and debris. Direct hits on multiple targets, Jenkins reported, his voice tinged with exhilaration. This thing's a monster. Don't celebrate yet, Alina said, her eyes scanning the displays. The rest of them are adapting. Sure enough, the remaining alien ships adjusted their formation, weaving between the Erebus's attacks with unnerving precision. Their weapons fired back, beams of green energy slamming into the supercarrier's shields. The ship shuddered under the impact, and warning lights flashed across the bridge. Shields at 67%, the AI reported. Sustained fire will compromise structural integrity. Alina gritted her teeth. Tessa, what about offensive control? Can we take over the weapons? Tessa shook her head. Not without direct access to the weapons array. The AIs locked it down. We're sitting ducks unless we change the game, Alina said. She turned to Jenkins. What else do we have? Jenkins scanned the displays frantically. There's something. A system labeled Helios Protocol, but it's locked behind every security barrier this ship has. Aye. Alina called out. What's the Helios Protocol? The AI hesitated. The Helios Protocol is a last resort weapon. Its activation will result in irreversible consequences. What kind of consequences? Tessa asked, her voice sharp. Total energy depletion of the core, the AI replied. The Erebus will become non-functional. Crew survival unlikely. Alina's stomach churned. A doomsday weapon that would destroy the ship, and likely them along with it. But the enemy fleet was closing in, and the Erebus's conventional weapons weren't enough. Is it enough to take them all out? She asked. Yes, the AI confirmed. The Helios Protocol guarantees the elimination of all enemy vessels within range. Silence fell over the bridge as the weight of the decision settled on the crew. Tessa looked at Alina, her expression conflicted. If we use it, we're finished. But if we don't, they'll overwhelm us. Jenkins finished, his voice hollow. And probably Earth too. Alina closed her eyes for a brief moment, gathering her thoughts. The Erebus was humanity's last stand, a relic of a desperate past, and now it was up to them to decide whether its sacrifice would mean anything. Activate the Helios Protocol, Alina said, her voice steady. The AI responded immediately. Command authorization required. Alina placed her hand on the console, her heart pounding. Authorization. Captain Alina Carter. Initiate the Helios Protocol. The obelisk in the core chamber flared, its light flooding the ship. A low hum built into a deafening roar as energy coursed through the Erebus, its systems pushed to their absolute limits. Protocol activated, the AI announced. Brace for impact. The Erebus unleashed its final weapon, a blinding wave of energy that expanded outward, engulfing the alien fleet. One by one, the enemy ships disintegrated, their sleek forms shattered into nothingness. The shockwave rippled through the void, consuming everything in its path. The crew watched in awe as the fleet was annihilated. But the victory was bittersweet. The bridge lights flickered, and the ship's hum faded to silence. Systems powered down one by one, leaving only the faint glow of emergency lights. We did it, Jenkins said, his voice a mix of relief and disbelief. They're gone. But so is the Erebus, Tessa said quietly. We're adrift. Alina sank into the command chair, her body heavy with exhaustion. We did what we had to. Humanity has a chance now. The AI's voice returned, faint and wavering. Mission complete. Thank you, Captain. The holographic displays faded, and the bridge fell into darkness. The Erebus, once a weapon of unmatched power, now lay silent, a ghost of its former self. Alina looked out at the void, her gaze unwavering. The price had been steep, but the enemy was defeated, and for the first time in centuries, humanity had a chance to fight its way forward. Legacy of the Erebus. The Erebus floated in silence, a colossal shadow against the stars. The once vibrant hum of its systems was gone, replaced by the faint creaks of a ship now lifeless. The crew sat on the darkened bridge, their faces illuminated only by the emergency lights that cast a dim, red glow over the room. Elena Carter leaned back in the command chair, her head resting against its cold frame. The adrenaline that had kept her sharp during the battle had worn off, leaving behind a gnawing fatigue. Around her, the crew shared the same expression, a mix of exhaustion, relief, and an unspoken question. What now? Tessa broke the silence first, her voice soft but resolute. The core's gone. Whatever powered this ship for centuries, it's burned out completely. What about life support? Jenkins asked, his voice tinged with worry. Do we have enough to get back to the stellar Voyager? Tessa checked her datapad, the faint glow of its screen reflecting in her tired eyes. Barely. But we'll have to go on foot. The docking systems are offline. Mark sighed, rubbing his temples. So we're stranded on a dead ship, with no power, and no guarantee those creatures are all gone. Great. They're gone, Elena said firmly, sitting upright. The Helios Protocol wiped out everything connected to the core. The Erebus may be dead, but so are our enemies. Lai gestured to the viewport, where the remnants of the alien fleet drifted as glowing particles in the darkness. You think that's all of them? What if there's more out there? There probably is, Elena admitted, her tone sober. But we gave humanity a fighting chance. That's what matters. The crew made their way back through the Erebus's corridors, now eerily quiet. The walls that once pulsed with blue energy were dull and lifeless, their strange markings fading into obscurity. Each step felt heavier, as if the ship's monumental history weighed down on them. They passed the core chamber, its obelisk now dark and cracked. Tessa lingered for a moment, running her hand over its cold surface. It's strange, she said softly. This ship wasn't just a weapon. It was alive in a way, like it had a purpose, even beyond the war. Elena joined her, staring at the shattered obelisk. Maybe it did, but it was also a prison for both the AI and those creatures. Whatever its purpose was, it's fulfilled now. Or it's passed on to us, Tessa said, her voice heavy with meaning. Elena nodded, and they continued toward the docking bay. As they reached the airlock that led to the stellar Voyager, Jenkins stopped suddenly, his eyes widening as he stared at his scanner. Captain, wait. What now? Elena asked, turning sharply. There's something else, Jenkins said, his voice tinged with disbelief. I'm picking up a signal. It's faint, but it's coming from the Erebus. That's impossible, Tessa said. The core's dead. This ship has no power. Jenkins shook his head. I know, but the signal's there. It's a transmission. From the air. The crew exchanged uneasy glances as Jenkins activated the scanner's audio output. A faint, fragmented voice crackled through the device. Humans. Legacy. Not the end. Elena's brow furrowed. AI, can you hear me? What is this transmission? The voice responded, its words broken but unmistakable. Data. Preserved. Future. Tessa's eyes widened. It's the ship's memory. Even with the core destroyed, it must have stored a backup. But why? The transmission continued, clearer now. You have what is needed. Humanity's future lies beyond. Elena stared at the scanner, her mind racing. The Erebus hadn't just been a weapon. It had been a repository of knowledge, a time capsule of humanity's past and its greatest technological achievements. The AI had preserved that legacy even in its final moments. We need to extract that data, Elena said, her voice firm. If the Erebus left us a message, we can't ignore it. Jenkins nodded, his fingers moving over the scanner. I can isolate the transmission and download the data, but it'll take time. Do it, Elena ordered. We're not leaving without it. As Jenkins worked, The rest of the crew secured the airlock and prepared to board the stellar Voyager. Tessa sat near the doorway, staring out at the vast, empty corridors of the Erebus. "This ship was supposed to be forgotten," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But we brought it back to life, even if only for a moment." Elena sat beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Sometimes things need to be remembered, even if they're painful." The Erebus wasn't just a relic. It was a reminder of what humanity is capable of, both its mistakes and its triumphs. The scanner beeped, and Jenkins stood, holding up the device. "Got it. It's all here. The ship's logs, the AI's protocols, even schematics for its systems. This is incredible." Elena took the scanner, her grip firm. "This isn't just data. It's hope. Let's make sure it gets back to Earth." The crew boarded the stellar Voyager, their relief palpable as the ship's systems powered up. As they prepared to leave, Elena took one last look at the Erebus through the viewport. The ship, once a symbol of war and sacrifice, now floated quietly, its secrets entrusted to those who had dared to awaken it. Elena felt a pang of gratitude and loss. "Goodbye, old friend," she murmured. The stellar Voyager pulled away, its engines igniting as it set course for home. Behind them, the Erebus drifted into the void, a silent monument to humanity's resilience. As the stars stretched before them, Jenkins turned to Elena. "What do we do with the data?" Elena's gaze was steady, her voice resolute. "We learn from it. We use it, and we make sure the mistakes of the past never happen again." The stellar Voyager disappeared into the darkness, carrying with it the legacy of the Erebus, a story of survival, sacrifice, and the unyielding spirit of humanity.